Hi, this is Bruce Rawles. Today I'm talking with Jaymee Brandt, who is a fellow course student and teacher. And Jamie's been studying the course for a number of years. I think you said about 15. And anyway, a fellow enthusiast of Ken Wapnick's work. And I've been fortunate to attend a number of Jamie's online study groups and classes recently, and I think very highly of them. And so I'm delighted today to be sharing this conversation with you, Jaymee, and look forward to to more. And also, you picked a great topic, which I think is just super helpful, which is the rules for decision. But before we begin, maybe you could just tell us kind of how the course found you, or vice versa, that usual kind of thing that's always of interest.
Like so many people, so many course students that I know, I've found the course when my life was at a very difficult and painful crossroads. I had done a lot of study and looking at other pathways, but when the course found me, it very clearly to me was the one. I had absolutely no idea what it was saying, even though I thought I did. But over time, and with a great deal of study and help with teachers like Ken Wapnick's work, I've been able to learn more and more, and I absolutely am in love with this pathway, this way, this version of the universal course. And right now, what I do is I do a study group that meets from 4 to 6 p.m. on Eastern time. And you can find that group listed on the Miracle Distribution Center site. Welcome any new members that would like to join us. And we're about to start in looking at the 50 miracle principles, along with the book done by Ken Wapnick as a guide.
Excellent. Well, thank
So,
you. And yeah, again, I've really enjoyed the conversations and your insights that have been shared along with the other participants as well. Yeah, and it's hard to do much better than Ken's work in my book. Anyway. He just nails it so beautifully all the time. Yeah. So your topic today that you suggested was going through the rules for decision, and this is such a great step-by-step checklist for keeping ourselves on track with the course's metaphysics and just watching our mind, really, isn't it? So do you want to read the first paragraph of that? Yeah.
absolutely. And
Okay.
I would like to point out too, that this says that this now becomes the focus for the curriculum.
Mhm.
And even with the word course, I think sometimes we move away from the idea that this really is a course, a curriculum, a study that we need to follow, except that we have the world's greatest teacher who offers us nothing but patience, and never any anger about when we go astray, simply just waiting for us to come back to the truth of what is. So
Exactly.
the new beginning now becomes the focus of the curriculum. The goal is clear, but now you need specific methods for attaining it. The speed by which it can be reached depends on this one thing alone: your willingness to practice every step. Each one will help a little every time it is attempted, and together will these steps lead you from the dreams of judgment to forgiving dreams and out of pain and fear. They are not new to you, but they are more ideas than rules of thought to you as yet. So now we need to practice them a while until they are the rules by which you live. We seek to make them habits now, so you will have them ready for whatever you need. I would like to interject one other thing, if I could, Bruce, and that
Of
is
course.
that I've read the text and studied it many times, but I tend to probably skip over more things than I should in terms of study. And this is clearly saying we need to practice these rules on
Mhm.
a regular basis to integrate them and make them part of our way in the world. And what we get from that is extraordinary. But I think for the last 15 years, apparently I've overlooked it. And now I've become a very serious student of these rules for decision, and what I'm feeling and seeing has just been remarkable.
Yeah. And as you say, serious, I'm smiling because I'm thinking, well, the course actually seems like it asks us to not take the ego seriously,
Right.
but just notice how seriously we take it, and slowly but surely stop doing that. And I think that's part of the whole emphasis of the rules for decision, is to just notice how much we've needlessly tormented and tortured ourselves by not trying this curriculum and not trying these rules for decision and applying them. So
Right. I mean,
yeah.
I think there's a tendency sometimes. There's even that line in Ken Wapnick's book, that Helen Schuckman said, "Well, this course doesn't work," to Jesus. He said, "Why don't you try to do what I asked you to do?" And that applies to all of us.
Now, talk about the ultimate benevolent, kind, smart aleck response, right? So who says Jesus doesn't have a sense of humor in his course,
Oh
right?
my goodness, right.
Yeah.
That's apparent in this document as well. So.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Yeah. Shall I read the next section?
Absolutely.
Okay, so this is Article 1, Rules for Decision. Paragraph 1. Decisions are continuous. You do not always know when you are making them. But talk about mindfulness, right? But with a little practice with the ones you recognize, a set begins to form which sees you through the rest. It is not wise to let yourself become preoccupied with every step you take. The proper set, adopted consciously each time you wake, will put you well ahead. And if you find resistance strong and dedication weak, you're not ready. Do not fight yourself. In italics for emphasis. But think about the kind of day you want and tell yourself there is a way in which this very day can happen just like that. Then try again to have the day you want. I like to emphasize the emphasis on do not fight yourself, because to me that's sort of like using ego to overcome the ego, because the whole ego thought system is adversarial, oppositional, and confrontational. And if we're fighting ourselves, that means that we are not ready to undo the ego, and that's okay. I mean, at least we can afford to be gentle with and patient with ourselves when we look at that resistance, and realize that the happy inevitability is that we will sooner or later tire of the ego's ceaseless wars in our mind, and say, okay, enough of this. But in the meantime, we go back and forth, and that's pretty normal and expected, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and that gentleness is so key. That and it's just so encouraging. It's like the encouragement you give a little child, and that is always the way Jesus speaks to us, as either literally being insane or as a little child. So I love that softness, that encouragement to just make the right decision.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. When you're talking about a little child, I was almost picturing, sort of like our inner adult sends us to our room kind of thing when we have a tantrum, but not in a mean-spirited way. It's just sort of like, okay, you've banished yourself to a temporary seeming isolation, but that'll pass. You'll tire of that. We'll all get bored with that fight that we keep making, and eventually that resistance will wane, and we'll want to willingly, happily look at these rules and try them out.
And I think the other thing that's so interesting that I've thought about recently is that when we do that, we're always fighting an illusion. We're literally fighting something that is not there. So there's just that piece that helps us, I think, get past that.
Yeah. Yeah, we're all like Don Quixote fighting, tilting windmills, and like, why am I doing this?
Right.
Yeah, what's this impossible dream I keep fighting? Yeah. Do you want to read the next paragraph?
Sure.
Okay.
The outlook starts with this: today I will make no decisions by myself. This means that you're choosing not to be the judge of what to do, but it also means that you will not judge the situations where you will be called upon to make response. For if you judge them, you set the rules for how you should react to them. And then another answer cannot but produce confusion and uncertainty and fear. This is your major problem. Oh, sorry, that's your next one.
Oh, well, I was just kind of waiting for your commentary on that.
I was going to say that this is kind of Jesus being sneaky and throwing in this huge mark here that, oh, by the way, here you can think about having this extraordinary day that where everything is wonderful, but there's a hook. You can't judge.
Right.
You can't
Right.
judge the situations that are brought up in front of you, where you're called to make that response. That is just enormous. And of
Yeah.
course, so much of the course talks about judgment, but
Mhm.
so many of us hand wave it off and say, well, that's something I'll deal with later when I'm a more advanced student. I'll get to not judging at some, and I'll think about it a little bit, but not really. And this is saying, if you want to do this with this process, you cannot judge those situations.
Mhm.
And it's really wonderful because
Yeah.
it brings us back to that the most important thing, which is getting past judgment.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, that section 10 in the manual about the relinquishment of judgment comes to mind, and how we have no basis for it, but we keep trying to do it anyway from our limited myopic view of the world,
Right.
and yet every time we do that, we did sabotage our peace, and just noticing that over and over again, I think helps us, and I think that's what our kindness teacher who gave us this curriculum keeps suggesting is just
Right.
keep looking at how the instant you start to assess the situation and figure things out from your limited perspective, and we all do that, it's just like that's just going to short circuit any peace that was possible.
Mhm.
But the instant we are willing to even just a little bit suspend that, it's like, oh wow, I am a little more peaceful. And I think that's why these rules, like you say very appropriately, bring up the idea of judgment so early on with as a criteria. Well, not judging as a criteria for those rules for decision. Yeah.
Well, I think too, when you're when you look at these rules, you go, okay, I can do that. I can say I'm not going to make a decision by myself,
Hmm.
and I'm
Hmm.
only going to look at that, at the Holy Spirit. But then it goes, but here you also cannot judge, and that is something that we're perfectly capable of learning. But as I say, we very often set it aside.
Hmm.
So I think that hook is there in terms of giving us the day that we want, which is the bribery piece. The perfect day. Here it is. You can have it.
Right. Yeah. And,
Absolutely
and,
yours. I promise you.
and
Right.
it's not false advertising, unlike so much of this world's false
No,
advertising.
I can absolutely attest to that
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
absolutely 100% accurate and true.
Hmm. Hmm. Exactly. Should I read the next one?
Absolutely.
Okay, this is your major problem now. You still make up your mind and then decide to ask what you should do. Oh, what a concept. Yeah. And what you hear may not resolve the problem as you saw it first. This leads to fear because it contradicts what you perceive, and so you feel attacked and therefore angry. There are rules by which this will not happen, but it does occur at first while you are learning how to hear. And the importance of listening is emphasized. Both vision and listening, I think, are both emphasized, not with our physical ears and eyes, but with Holy Spirit's help. The vision and the audition, if you will, in our mind, to the true voice of reason, and the reason that the Course talks about, which is seeing that separation never happened, and that from that perspective, and only that perspective, we're able to look without condemnation or judgment on everyone and everything with a lot of practice. and that's why these rules for decision are so important, because they help us with that practice, don't they?
And I do think the thing sometimes that's overlooked too is that these are literally rules.
Mhm.
They are rules. They operate in our thinking in a very real way. You're going to
Mhm.
get one kind of result or another, and it tells you which both kinds of results are possible
Yeah,
depending upon which rule you're following.
exactly. And there's only two thought systems, so this really kind of distills down to just choosing between one of two thought systems. But
Right.
all these rules are very helpful in kind of when our mind starts to go off the rails, it just gently nudges it back on course and makes that correction. So, yeah.
throughout the day, at any time you think of it and have a quiet moment for reflection, tell yourself again the kind of day you want, the feelings you would have, the things you would want to happen to you, and the things you would experience, and say, if I make no decisions by myself, this is the day that will be given me. These two procedures, practiced well, were served to let you be directed without fear, for opposition will not first arise and then become a problem in itself. So again, the promise is huge. You get to describe the kind of day, the experiences that you want, and it says, just do these two things. Know that you can't make a decision. You're not going to make a decision by yourself. And then you will be given this kind of day. Mm-hmm. As long as you don't prejudge or judge the situation that arises that you have to contend with.
Yeah.
Sounds so simple, right?
Well, yeah, and in truth it is, but we complicate the hell out of everything.
Right. We do tend to complexify things.
Yeah. Okay, so number 5. But there will still be times when you have judged already. Like probably most of the time, if we're honest with ourselves, but that's okay. We'll get over that in time. Now the answer will provoke attack unless you quickly straighten out your mind to want an answer that will work. Be certain this has happened if you feel yourself unwilling to sit by and ask to have the answer given you. This means you have decided by yourself and cannot see the question. Now you need a quick restorative before you ask again. And then the restorative is always, really just listening to Holy Spirit's assessment of the situation, which is the Son of God is guiltless, and everyone's in that category, and including us and everyone, anyone or anything we can think of. So that restorative really lets everyone off the hook, doesn't it? I mean, that's when we take that to heart and see that the specifics brought to that place in our mind can be seen differently and without condemnation.
And what's so interesting to me in this practice is that Jesus gives us 2 get out of jail cards free. He gives us 2 possible ways to go back to having the kind of day that we want to have if we have gone astray. And in both cases, there's not a hint of guilt or even ironically judgment. It's simply saying, come back to this place, come back here. So I'll read this next paragraph. This is get out of jail card number 1. Okay. Remember once again the day you want and recognize that something has occurred that is not part of it. Then realize that you have asked a question by yourself and must have said an answer in your terms. Then say, I have no question. I forgot what to decide. This cancels out the terms you have set and lets the answer show you what the question must have really been. Very simple, very gentle, just redirecting us back to truth.
Yeah, and I really like your emphasis on how this process is not punitive in any way. It's not like there's some kind of punishment required for making the wrong choice. When we essentially go astray from the Holy Spirit's thought system, we're not really thinking at all. In fact, the course's early workbook lessons emphasize that in such a brilliant way that everything I think on my own is meaningless, which is basically equivalent to saying that any illusion that I adopt as reality is just trying to make a dream real, trying to make what never happened in eternity a big deal, and just being really gentle and patient with ourselves when we find ourselves doing that again, and just say, oh, well, I didn't really have a question here. I just forgot what to decide. I thought there was something real that I needed to figure out, but my whole foundation was incorrect, right? If I forgot what to decide, it's like the whole premise of the line of questioning was wrong. And I think that's looking at the ego's line of questioning and reasoning as being silly and forgivable rather than evil, sinful, and wicked. as Ken points out, Ken Wapnick, I think I love how he says that it's not evil, sinful, or wicked. It's just silly when
Right.
we let ego try to make decisions. Yeah.
Right. And I think at one point, Ken Wapnick called this learning more in Jesus's school of forgiveness,
Yeah.
this particular section,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
especially
good.
since he referred to the curriculum in
Y-
this. So
Yes. Yes.
Jesus's school of forgiveness. And that the idea that this simply cancels out some, the even the word cancel, it never existed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not there.
Yep.
And it brings us back to truth again.
Like a squeaky eraser.
Exactly.
And the whiteboard is now clean. Wow. How
It's
cool is
just
that?
amazing, though. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
just astonishing.
Yeah. Exactly. So number 7.
Try to observe this rule without delay. I'm sorry, I'm taking your spot again, Bruce.
Was that? Oh, was I supposed to read that one?
I think so.
Okay, if we're taking turns. Okay, sure. Why not? Okay. Try to observe this rule without delay, despite your opposition. For you have already gotten angry, and your fear of being answered in a different way from what your version of the question asks will gain momentum until you believe the day you want is one in which you get your answer to your question. Good luck with that, right? And you will not get it, for it would destroy the day by robbing you of what you really want. This can be very hard to realize when once you have decided by yourself the rules that promise you a happy day. Yet this decision can still be undone by simple methods you can accept. And I think the whole metaphor of robbing us, it's like it's needless suffering, it's needless larceny of the peace of mind that is possible, at all times, even though that sounds unrealistic, but the course is telling us that, if we persist and gently, patiently, continue on practicing these rules, we will slowly but surely transition from a day of war to one of peace.
And it harkens back to that beautiful section, this need not be.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So here we go with get out of jail card number 2. And, and it's our own self-described jail that doesn't exist.
Exactly.
So the door swings open if we take these remedies. Right? If you are so unwilling to receive, I think that's such a fascinating word there too. So unwilling to receive, you cannot even let your question go. You can begin to change your mind with this. At least I can decide I do not like what I feel now. This much is obvious and paves the way for the next step. So it's another, even a softer, gentler way of looking at it.
Yeah, just noticing how we feel at any moment and asking ourselves honestly, am I at peace? Am I at peace? Am I at peace? A friend of mine named Dave made a little flow chart, just a little simple, little diamond with, am I at peace? Yes, no. And if I'm not at peace, I need to go back and ask, the correct teacher. That if I keep asking the ego for counsel, I'm not going to be at peace. But if I choose Holy Spirit, I have the opportunity to be at peace, and that's the only outcome of that choice. Yeah. But just noticing how we feel, I think, takes a lot of practice, because we're so used to denying and pushing down and suppressing and repressing, our real experience of this world, and we've gotten kind of used to it. We've kind of gotten callous to it. I'm reminded of, I haven't even actually seen the movie yet, but the previews, the trailers for this movie called Free Guy is about a character who is in a video game, and he one of the people that are a person that's playing the video game hands him this magic pair of glasses where he can see all the things that the players of the video game see. And what's interesting is even in the trailer, you kind of get the sense that he's in this game called Bank Heist. And so every day his bank gets robbed, and he's just, well, isn't that how life is? I mean, that's just normal everyday life. But when we put the Holy Spirit's goggles on, we say, well, wow, this is a game, and it's an insane game. And I've gotten so accustomed to it. I don't even question the premise that suffering should be the norm, that
Right.
I should be miserable. So I'm paying attention to how we feel is not something we just say, okay, weekend workshop. Now I know how I feel. And I'm going to, respond to that consistently, just out of the chute. I think it takes a lot of practice to reveal the resistance to noticing that divine discomfort, if you will,
And so much emphasis, rightly so, in the course is on mind.
Yes.
But there's so many significant statements in the course about, if you want to know how you feel, if you want to know if you're following the right teacher,
Mhm.
how do you feel? It
Mhm.
really becomes a very simple and obvious signpost for what direction we should go.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with what you're saying, that keying into those feelings, and if we are not in complete joy, then we are most likely not following the Holy Spirit.
Mhm. And even if we're just sort of, have parts of our day that are okay, then we could actually, with all honesty, we could say, well, I probably could actually up my game, not that it's a game, but improve the quality of my experience by choosing that thought system of inclusion and kindness, and that rejects the belief in separation, and if I can do that more consistently, again,
Yeah,
with practice.
yeah, and that sense that it really is a practice. I know that you know Ken and others have often referred to the fact that learning the course is very much like learning to play an instrument. And for the longest time, I used to joke and say I'm playing the drum set in my parents' garage. So I
That's
haven't
great.
made it to Carnegie yet, for sure.
No, no, no. I
But
think, yeah. I think most of us are, if we're honest with ourselves, is like, well, and Jesus points that out in discourse. He says, he calls us little children, and
right,
sometimes infants, and we're still very new in the way of salvation, that kind of thing. But but that's okay, because that's actually really promising, which kind of reminds us that we actually can feel tremendously much more peaceful than we can even imagine right now.
right,
Yeah,
absolutely.
which is really, I think, a dazzlingly hopeful reminder. And it's not just false hope. It's a genuine recognition that is our heritage, and our um, you know
It's the
our
truth.
trajectory. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
where we're
right.
headed. Right. Yeah.
Yep, exactly right.
Yep.
I think this is still you, Bruce. 9.
Okay. And number 8, if you're so
Number 8.
yeah, if you're so unwilling to receive, you cannot even let your question go, you can begin to change your mind with this. At least I can decide I do not like what I feel now.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that's the not know of the course's curriculum, isn't it?
right, right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right. Yeah. So, um,
And then he says, this much is obvious and paves the way for the next easy step.
right. Having decided that you do not like the way you feel, what could be easier than to continue with? And so I hope I've been wrong. This works against the sense of opposition and reminds you that help is not being thrust upon you, but is something that you want and that you need because you do not like the way you feel. This tiny opening will be enough to let you go ahead with just a few more steps you need to let yourself be helped. Remarkable again. Yeah.
Yeah. So any remarks?
I just, it's just, I think again, it is just when you say that the sense of opposition, there is no opposition, outside of this field of duality. The truth of where we are and who we are is unopposed love, peace, joy,
Mhm.
happiness. So even the notion of opposition in ourselves should bring up kind of a clue that we're going the wrong way.
Exactly. Yeah. Well put. Well put. Yeah. Because then, whenever there's a sense of conflict, or an adversarial quality, or something fighting against something else, that's it's got to be, the thought system of duality and ego, right? So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
And not to feel bad about it, not to, add guilt on more guilt, but just say, oh, well, this just doesn't work. It's a very, very pragmatic, but sort of objective feedback system, isn't it? Where we just say, okay, well, it's not working. So I must need to try the other thought system.
And again, as you pointed out, it's just noticing. I mean, noticing is huge, because noticing brings change, because then we're open to the idea of going another way, trying something else,
Yeah,
because we're clear then that this is not working.
exactly.
Did you want to read
Number
10?
10, sure.
Yeah.
Now you've reached the turning point, because it has occurred to you that you will gain if what you have decided is not so. Until this point is reached, you will believe your happiness depends on being right. But this much reason have you now attained. It would be better off if you were wrong. and then of course that brings to mind the classic, almost a coarse cliche of, would you rather be right or happy? So
Right. And, for the longest time, I was falsely ascribing that to somebody else, but it really is, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy, is solely the origin of that really is in the Course. And it is such a powerful statement, but also part of, I think that I see the tongue in cheek of Jesus there too. There's just a hint of that, because again, you can make either choice. It's strictly up to you. And very often, for most of us, we get so invested in being right, and it's very clear that we give up our happiness in that process. We get closed down.
Yeah. From in a cosmic perspective, even on the level of form, we're all basically clueless as a first approximation to about everything.
Right.
We judge based on the sensory feedback that's misinterpreted of a body that, if we take good care of it, maybe lasts a century. That's housed in a cylinder about 1 meter in diameter and 2 meters tall, and has limited spectral resolution of electromagnetic energy, and then distorts the hell out of that with all kinds of interpretations. And we think we have a handle on what's going on our own little tiny portion of the universe, let alone the whole thing.
And all of which is certain to disintegrate.
Evil that too, yeah. Yeah, we're rearranging the holodeck chairs on a Titanic dream, and we think we think we're in command of the cruise here, right? So yeah, yeah. But the good news is that cruise, never happened in truth. Yeah. But so that gives us an opportunity to be glad that we were wrong. Because we thought we were on with the SS Minnow, instead of the Titanic. We thought this was a 3-hour tour, but maybe it was just a tiny mad idea. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Mixing metaphors there, oceanic ones. Yeah.
I love them though. I'm really, it's perfect. So
good.
This tiny grain of wisdom will suffice to take you further. You're not coerced, but merely hope to get a thing you want. And you can say in perfect honesty, I want another way to look at this. Now you've changed your mind about the day and have remembered what you really want. Its purpose has no longer been obscured by the insane belief you want it for the goal of being right when you are wrong. Thus is the readiness to asking brought to your awareness, for you cannot be in conflict when you ask for what you want and see that it is this for which you ask. So you can't ask for that insistence of being right, and at the same time follow these directions of which requires open-mindedness and fluidity. And I think more poignantly than many other parts of the Course, it points out to this being, a classroom, just a classroom. And our study is unending, but it's always supported. And whenever we do the right thing, there's a little clap somewhere in heaven because we've increased our own joy.
Yeah, exactly. And that choice always seems to take some form of recognition that if I get upset by, or have my happiness or peace of mind contingent on something that happens or doesn't happen, or a combination of things that happen or don't happen in the material world. And I can recognize that that's a pretty silly way to structure my peace of mind. You know, so we do need another way to look at this, right? I could see peace instead of this.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you want to read 12?
12, sure. This is the final. This final step is but acknowledgement of lack of opposition to be helped. It is a statement of an open mind, not yet certain, but willing to be shown. Perhaps there is another way to look at this. What can I lose by asking? And that's yeah, I'll finish the paragraph first, but then comment. Thus, you now can ask a question that makes sense, and so the answer will make sense as well. Nor will you fight against it, for you see that it is you who will be helped by it. And I was thinking that what can I lose by asking is really another way of saying that the ego's misinterpretation you can only lose or seem to lose by going with that. Whereas with the Holy Spirit's inclusive vision that sees everyone as guiltless, the only possibility is a win-win, and everyone's included in that win. Yeah, but you know, that's probably not how we normally look at things, because we think of, well, what's in it for this Bruce character or this Jaymee character or this whoever else is listening, you know, character. Yeah, but over time we'll recognize that if that limited sense of self doesn't always seem to work, there must be a better way, huh?
There must be a better way, which is the choice that everybody will ultimately come to, according to the person. And that's really, I think, why this comes to so many of us when, you know, out of a time in life when things have been difficult, because you kind of thrown up your hands mentally and figuratively and going, well, I just don't know what else to do now. And then this is the other way.
Exactly.
Along with thousands of other versions of the universal course.
Exactly.
But it's no accident when it drops in that part of the dream. So.
Yeah. Gotta be a better way. And yeah, there's lots of variations. It's never about the form, but the content and the mind of forgiveness, you know, regardless of what words we ascribe to that, is the way out of the quagmire. Yeah.
It must be clear that it is easier to have a happy day if you prevent unhappiness from entering at all. But this takes practice in the rules that will protect you from the ravages of fear. When this has been achieved, the sorry dream of judgment has forever been undone. But meanwhile, you have need for practicing the rules for its undoing. Let us then consider once again the very first of the decisions which are offered here. And I guess, you know, that's what I overlooked for 15 years, that sentence of, you know, let us practice these steps and this process when we encounter these circumstances, so that we begin to understand that we never make decisions on our own to begin with, and that we're always choosing either the ego or the Holy Spirit as our teacher. But bringing it into awareness is enormously helpful.
Yep.
And for that, for me, it definitely takes practice.
Yeah, it does. And I think that speaks volumes of, you know, Ken Wapnick's brilliant commentary that, you know, the course is never pitched to a person. It's pitched to the decision-making part of our mind. Right. That is the only two positions of that switch, so to speak, are ego and Holy Spirit, or you know, condemnation or forgiveness. And if we can learn to generalize that over time and see that every happy outcome in our mind comes from choosing, just denying the denial of truth, denying ego's misinterpretation, then we have happier days. Yeah. It seemed like there's something else I was going to say, but
you are on
14. Yeah. We said you can begin a happy day with a determination not to make decisions by yourself. This seems to be a real decision in itself, and yet you cannot make decisions by yourself. The only question really is with what you choose to make them. That is really all. The first rule then is not coercion, but a simple statement of a simple fact. You will not make decisions by yourself, whatever you decide, for they are made with idols or with God. And you ask help of Antichrist or Christ, and which you choose will join with you and tell you what to do. I think that's just reiterating what we're just talking about, isn't it?
Yes,
We've either got insanity or sanity going on in any given moment in our mind. And the only way to tell which one we've chosen is, am I peaceful?
yeah, and the paradox here from that very first declaration, which says, "Today I will make no decisions by myself," when in fact we can never make decisions by ourselves. And what Jesus is trying to heighten our awareness that we're always choosing one teacher or the other, that notion that it is just ourself without that choice, you know, becomes greater in awareness, and and it really is extraordinarily helpful to make that realization.
Yeah, it really is, isn't it? As you're saying that, I was thinking also that when we make the choice for sanity, the Holy Spirit's thought system, we're really choosing for the welfare and the benefit of the entire sonship, as the Course would put it, the entire all of creation. And when we have no idea of the magnitude of the impacts of that, is that when we let go of condemning thoughts and assessments of sin, guilt, fear, of the ego's, unholy trinity of three main categories of thinking, we're really healing our minds for all of creation,
Mhm.
which only seems to be outside us, but it's all in our mind. I think that's kind of the glad astonishment, I think, part that the Course talks about, when we realize, oh, I didn't have to wait for anyone else. Everyone else is already benefiting. and,
Exactly
and,
right.
and in fact, in truth, we're all celebrating a joyous awareness that we somehow have blocked, we think we've blocked, but we're benefiting all parts of our mind that seem to be fragmented, um, by practicing these rules for decision, aren't we?
And as you're saying, and all of this keeps continually leading us to the fact that the separation has never happened, and there
Yeah,
really is only one of us here.
yeah.
And every healing and clarity that we create on our own is for everyone,
Hmm.
for, because there is only one of us here.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah.
So I think we're at paragraph 15.
15, yeah.
Okay. Your day is not at random. It is set by what you choose to live it with, and how that friend whose counsel you've sought perceives your happiness. You always ask advice before you decide on anything. Let this be understood, and you can see there cannot be coercion here, nor grounds for opposition, that you may be free. There is no freedom from what must occur, and if you think there is, you must be wrong. Another powerhouse zinger there at the
Hmm.
very end of this.
Hmm.
And it speaks to the fact that the script is written
Hmm.
again, that and it alludes to that fact also in the manual for teachers, when it says there are no accidents, there's no, everything is planned and intended, and what we do get to choose is how our mind accepts it, and how we choose to respond to and learn from it, and which teacher we're listening to. And
Hmm.
that's why I think one of my favorite sections has always been the last section in the text, which is choose once again.
Hmm.
That's all that ever happens with trials, is that if we have made the wrong choice, as it's demonstrated in this particular section, we just choose differently. We choose once again until we reach the return to our Father in heaven.
Exactly, exactly. And it's just over and over and over until we become more consistent with it, huh?
And I think that's why that notion that it is like learning a musical instrument is very apt and elegant way of describing it. And within that notion is it requires practice and study.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. And that kind of ties into something that I've been repeating a number of times recently. A few weeks ago, I heard on one of the Miracle Voices podcasts that Judy Sketch-Whitson is doing with Matthew McCabe for their series for the Foundation for Inner Peace. She mentioned on at least a couple of different occasions, probably more than that, how the course, A Course in Miracles, is really like Olympic training for the mind.
Yeah.
And she recounted this conversation she had with a course student who was also an athlete who said, how long, I was kind of asking rhetorically, well, how long does it take before, we start getting the benefits of the course? And knowing that Judy had been, the publisher of the course and obviously been around a long time. And so Judy said, well, you're an athlete, aren't you? How many hours a day do you practice your athletics? And she said, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 hours sometimes, and then the obvious question was, well, how many hours do you practice the course? And it's like, oh yeah, which is kind of like for all of us, oh yeah, what a concept. I could practice this more than just a few little interspersed times during the day. And so we're all working up to going from hobbyist level course students to full-fledged Olympic practitioners, I guess you could say. But we need to be patient with ourselves and just do it at our own pace and not fight yourself, as that first part of what we just read says.
And there is that line, perhaps you know where it is, Bruce. I can't think of it offhand, but it says, when it dawns on you that this is your whole way out.
Yes. Yeah.
That this study is your whole way out.
It's,
and it does. I think that simply happens. You start reading this and practicing and seeing the results in one's life, and then you go, wow. I mean, the power of this just reveals itself more and more and more. And it's revealed in both joy and happiness. So.
Yeah. You must be on the same telepathic wavelength, because that quote that you were alluding to is, I think, from the As for the Rest section in the manual, which was just read this morning by a fellow course enthusiast in another meeting earlier today. It talks about how this is the way out of hell for us. I mean, this really is. Yeah. And that's our whole way out. And once we recognize that, just, following that teacher, just getting our tractor, letting that tractor beam lock onto us, to use a Star Trek metaphor, of the Holy Spirit's guidance, that's our way out of hell. Because on our own, we're blind and clueless. We're not going to figure it out on our own. But that's okay. But when we recognize that and see how silly it is to try to do it on our own, which is really equivalent to doing it with the ego. Again, we're always one teacher or another, but the ego is also blind, and we've made it blind by default. Yeah.
And again, with Jesus's wry sense of humor, early on in the course, when he says, you can procrastinate almost indefinitely.
Exactly.
But not forever.
Not forever. Yeah.
But almost.
Our tolerance, I think the rest of that goes something like, our tolerance for pain may be high, but it's not without limit, right?
Right.
Yeah, there's a limit to how much we want to, mercilessly torture ourselves with ego's insanity. Yeah. Which is a good thing, because there's a limit. At some point we'll say, there must be a better way. Please help me.
Right,
and then we realize that we just have to consistently ask for that help. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You want to read 16?
16, sure. The second rule as well is but a fact. For you and your advisor must agree on what you want before it can occur. It is but this agreement that permits all things to happen. Nothing can be caused without some form of union, be it with a dream of judgment or the voice for God. Decisions cause results because they are not made in isolation. They are made by you and your advisor, for yourself and for the world as well. The day you want, you offer the world, for it will be what you have asked for and will reinforce the rule of your advisor in the world. Whose kingdom is the world for you today? What kind of day will you decide to have? So we're really deciding for everyone, at least in our perception, and that colors how we see everyone and everything. There's another place where it talks about, if you spoke not of Christ to him, he won't speak of Christ to you. I'm paraphrasing as usual, which means that our mind's already made up. And so we've already chosen. I think that kind of, you mentioned that the script is written a few moments ago. And I was thinking that kind of ties into the fact that on the level of form, the billiard ball physics Newtonian model of the world, on that level is pretty accurate. But what the the modern physics revolution added to the equation that upset the material worldview was the idea of mind. It can no longer be ignored. With the Copenhagen interpretation and all that, it's like, that the mind no longer can be left out of the equation of how things turn out. But more importantly, I think the course's perspective on that would be that which teacher, as we've just been reading, which advisor, which friend, or in the case of the ego, which fiend, it just didn't get the R in its its noun, are we working with? And if we're using ego as our advisor, we're seeing a different interpretation, even though the script is the same script. At least that's been my experience, is that if I go into a situation already upset and, come out fighting kind of thing, ready to, I want an argument kind of thing, kind of like the old Monty Python skit where the guy goes and pays for an argument. If I'm looking for that fight, I'm going to find it. But if I'm looking for peace, and if I'm looking for an opportunity to see the foundation and the basis for forgiveness, the true basis that nothing happened, then I'm going to see that as well. And then I will see the innocence behind the form everywhere. Yeah.
It's also, what's interesting is it depends, we are the ones that put the valence of good or bad on whatever is occurring in our apparent or seeming experience. But there's that line in the element of trust that says it takes great learning to know that all things, circumstances, and events, this is a paraphrase, it's not exact, are for us.
Yes.
And in this world of illusion. And it's only to the degree that it is of value to us that you should accord it any reality at all. Yeah. So even though there's this script that's written, it's completely beneficial.
Yes.
We tend sometimes to think of it as, well, an accident happened here, or an illness happened over here, or what. But there is something for us in everything that seems to happen. There's always a huge benefit if we choose to see it. But sometimes we don't choose to believe that. We don't choose to believe that everything is for us. But we're very quick to judge situations that we don't care for as negative or bad or not good. And there's something for us in everything. Exactly. And learning that sensibility, I think, helps greatly with one's sense of peace and joy. Like if we do what Jesus asked us to do in the early part, saying, what is this for? And he asked us to do that every single time with every single event and circumstance. What is it for? But the implication is more than an implication, is that there's something for us in this seeming dream.
Yeah, it's an opportunity.
Pardon me?
I was talking over you. Say
again.
I was just going to say that's brilliant, and it's reminds us that everything is for an opportunity to get back to our mind, and particularly to that decision-making place in the mind where we really do have the opportunity to make a difference. One remaining freedom as a prisoner of this world is to get back to that decision maker and choose against the ego, but which automatically chooses a real identity. It's a shared one. Yeah, that's a joyous release from the imprisonment of the ego's tyranny. Yeah.
It needs but two who would have happiness this day to promise it to all the world. It needs but two to understand that they cannot decide alone, to guarantee the joy they ask for will be wholly shared. For they have understood the basic law that makes decision powerful and gives it all effects that it will ever have. it needs but two. These two are joined before there can be a decision. Let this be the reminder that you keep in mind, and you will have the day you want, and give it to the world by having it yourself. Your judgment has been lifted from the world by your decision for a happy day. And as you have received, so must you give. And as we've talked about before, Bruce, that also harkens to that biblical statement, wherever two or more are gathered together, there I am in the midst of them. Because, but in this particular case, it's like it needs but two, whether we are deciding, if our decision maker is going with the ego or the Holy Spirit. Both can empower some kind of result, because Jesus does nothing to deter our power of mind, even if we're going the wrong way. That would be, as he says early on in the course, the worst kind of interruption.
Mhm.
So we're allowed to make mistakes, but when we do, hopefully the level of pain that we get will make us say, there may be a better way here.
Exactly.
The wrong way.
Yeah.
So,
And I'm glad you brought that. I think of that as kind of like that principle of not interfering, that, just you're alluding to that. I think he says, like you're saying early in the text, it's like, if I interfered with that process, I'd be violating the most fundamental law there is, the law of cause and effect, which is basically saying that our minds are all cause. And
yes.
I like to think of that as sort of the equivalent to the Star Trek prime directive of non-interference,
And I'm a Trekkie too, so I understand absolutely.
Yeah. So it's like, if I think that I need to help, fix particularly someone else, it's like, oh, well, let's see. Okay, if this is a course in pure non-duality, then who needs the fixing again? Oh yeah, it's that man in the mirror, as Michael Jackson would say, right?
Well, one of my favorite lines in chapter 9 in section 3 is, when the Holy Spirit says, or Jesus says that, why do you think you can fix someone else? You can't even change yourself.
Exactly.
Like,
Exactly.
don't take the Holy Spirit's job. That's the Holy Spirit's job.
Mhm.
Your job is really just to love. That's it. End of
Yeah.
story.
That,
You can't fix somebody else. But there's a lot of resistance in all of us from, but with supposed constructive criticism, which is not that.
yeah. Yeah. I just keep trying to remind myself, whenever I'm more lucid anyway, that what seems to be someone else's call for help is ultimately my own, and also that everyone else's, if the course is true, then we're all just dreaming of exile.
Mhm.
But the only person whose dream of exile I need to be concerned with is my dream of exile,
Yeah.
because in terms of everyone else's dream, if that's not true for them either, then once I wake up, I'll find everyone's already there.
Yes.
The party's ongoing, and the celebration for waking up from the dream of separation is already happening, and we're all there. I'm the only one who's playing hooky from that party.
That's very well said. And that's important to understand. Right. Right.
Yeah.
It's always our own healing, our own choice, in every possible way.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for letting me go through this.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. This has been a delight, and really enjoyed the conversation, and look forward to our next conversation, whatever that might be. So
Thank you. I
thank
appreciate it.
you. Yeah. Any concluding comments or inspirations at this point? Or?
As I say, it took me 15 years to realize and understand it and take this a little bit more literally, that, I really have to practice this specific process that he's talking about. So I've been doing that for a while, and I'm finding that it has a lot of gifts involved. So for anybody else that maybe is a little bit earlier and you don't want to wait 15 years, I would encourage you to reread the beginning part of chapter 30, and consider maybe practicing those rules for decision to bring yourself a little bit more joy and happiness.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks. That little bit of practice is just, that our ongoing need to go beyond the intellectual understanding and take it to the heart, and really realize that our peace is actually contingent on how much we apply this. So yeah,
Absolutely.
which is a good thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
thanks again, Jaymee. This has just been a total delight, and I really appreciate you taking the time to share this with me.
Thank you, Bruce. I appreciate it.